us. Now, the Libyan leader, Colonel Gaddafi, is promising more violence if U.S. or NATO forces dare to intervene. Well, it's his latest salvo as he bids to cling to power. Well, meanwhile, the UN is warning of a humanitarian crisis as thousands of Libyans flee across the border to Tunisia. Well, let's get more from RT's Paula Sleer, who's in the region for us. Now, Paula, according to the UN, at least 180,000 people have already fled Libya, and there's more arriving at the Tunisian border. Can you just tell us what the situation is right now over there?
Well, we're receiving the same figures as you, at least 180,000 people who have so far fled Libya, and some 75,000 of them arriving here in Tunisia. Most of them are foreign laborers. They are being housed at the border points in tents where they're receiving food and medical supplies. Aid workers who are on the scene are warning that this is reaching crisis point, and we're hearing reports of crisis and chaos at these border points as guards struggle to keep the situation under control. Now, fighting is continuing throughout the country at several towns between forces loyal to the leader Muammar Gaddafi and rebel forces, particularly in those areas around the Libyan capital, Tripoli. Government forces are struggling to retain control and create and keep in place a buffer zone around what is still the leader's stronghold. There are increasingly fears that the situation could deteriorate into civil war.
All right, well, Paula, there are reports of fighting obviously continuing, and in the east, which was dominated by the protesters, there are reports that the pro-Gaddafi forces are gaining momentum. Is it a bit too premature to say that his regime will fall anytime soon? Where's the balance tipping at this point?
Well, it certainly does seem a bit premature. In his latest televised address, Muammar Gaddafi warned against international intervention. He said that thousands of Libyans would die if there was any kind of international forces on his soil. He also said that he was simply a symbol, that the real power was in the hands of the people, and as such, he could not meet their cause to dissolve the government and to implement any kind of constitutional reforms. He also vowed in quite a strong statement that he would fight until the last man and the last woman to remain in power. Now, discussions are continuing at the United Nations over a proposed no-fly zone over Libya. Now, this idea has been suggested by the British Prime Minister David Cameron. If indeed he goes ahead and commits himself to it, in essence, Britain will be committing itself to shooting down aircraft. Now, the idea has been rejected by many in the international community, including Russia. They say that it is for Libyans to determine their own fate and their own future. It is worth noting, though, that British troops are in the Libyan town of Benghazi. They've been there for nearly 2 weeks, and there are also growing concerns that they might take over chemical weapons stockpiles that are in that town. And this is because London has indicated that it has fears that Gaddafi might use these stockpiles against his own people. The official reason, though, for those British troops being there is humanitarian reasons. It's also the official reason that's been given by the United States for warships that it's sent to the region. It says that these warships might be used, or at least they're planning to use them in humanitarian efforts, but that all options are on the table. And this has raised concerns here that there might be behind the scenes some kind of plan for international intervention, despite Libyans saying that they do not want to have this.
All right, thank you very much for that update as we continue to cover the events in the region. Thank you, Paula. Now, as the Libyan crisis rages on, some foreign powers are weighing up whether to get involved. Well, Phyllis Benn is director of the Washington-based think tank, the Institute for Policy Studies. He believes that NATO's military intervention is unrealistic, and its recent posturing is just showing off.
This is an old story in Washington where humanitarian intervention is the excuse of the day. I don't think we're going to see the possibility of troop deployments or even necessarily ship involvement. I think this is partly a show of force to intimidate Gaddafi and to make nice, as it were, to the new leadership that will be rising in Libya to create a new government when Gaddafi is overthrown. There is no doubt that people in Washington and London and elsewhere are scurrying around desperate to figure out ways of ensuring that they get in on the ground floor, these new governments that are going to be in power, that their oil companies get in, that it's Chevron and BP rather than Russian or Chinese or other oil companies. The people of Libya face an even harder challenge than the people of Egypt and Tunisia and other countries that have existing governmental institutions in place that they can take over and use as the base In Libya, there are no such institutions. There is no parliament. There is no constitution. All of this is being created whole cloth. It's an incredibly exciting moment for people in Libya, but they're paying a huge price in blood to make that possible. The democratic revolution that is underway in Libya are indigenous, homegrown revolutionary processes. And they don't need U.S. government forces to teach them about democracy. They are claiming it on their own, and that needs to be respected.